And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our third episode of a new show called the Hoosier Sound. I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I am delighted to present you with this brand new podcast. I am here with Matt Lukens and Noah Skibby, and we're here to give you the scoop of some IU sports. We are an IU-centered podcast that focuses on IU sports such as basketball, football, and more from the point of view of a student or a young adult. To end each show, we will also give our view on hot takes from around the world of sports. We will be going live every Tuesday evening, but if you miss us live, you can subscribe to various networks so you can listen to us on your own time. In just 1 week, 2 weeks, we're now on iTunes, which is now called Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, and our live stream will be posted on our YouTube page after each recording. All you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts and just hit subscribe. Our videos will then pop up for you when they're published. It's really simple, really easy, and it'll mean a lot to us if you guys hit that subscribe button for us. Give a comment below or contact us with which network you'd like us to publish our podcast on. Social media is also big for us, and we post updates for you guys in Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you give us a like and a follow, as well as subscribe in our YouTube account. All of the information is in the description below. Lastly, you can also check out our website, thehoosiersound.wordpress.com, to find all of our information in one place. All right, it's time for some sports talk. This past weekend, the Hoosiers played a really hot game in Bloomington as IU football took down the Georgia Southern Eagles 52-17. I'll start us off with my first takeaways from the game. I want to start by looking back last week to what we kind of talked about, some of the keys for IU to play a good game. We all thought IU would win this, but we talked about a few things for IU to look at to make sure that we could still play a good game and we could look good going forward. The three biggest things we talked about were secondary stops, turnovers, and the running game. Secondary, Georgia Southern only had 133 passing yards, it's a lot better than what we've been doing recently, and that's pretty good. We're still waiting for an interception from our secondary, but I think that's coming pretty quickly. Turnovers. We forced 3 turnovers, our first 3 turnovers of the season, and one of them was even a fumble for a touchdown, which is much improved. And the running game, we ran for 282 yards. We talked about how IU hadn't even broken that 100-yard game yet, and we got 282, and 185 of them came from Morgan Ellison, almost a breakout running back because we haven't seen much of him at all. Everything we talked about, the Hoosiers were able to address it. Since this show is from the perspective of a student or a young adult, we wanted to kind of talk to you guys about how some of the students were perceiving some of these topics in the stands. The first I want to touch on is Richard Lego. Most of the students don't really like him, regardless of what he does. If he does well or if he does poorly, they don't really like him. Whenever Peyton Ramsey would come on the field, they would cheer for him. I thought that was interesting, especially when he had, yes, the outcome wasn't the best, but he had 400-plus passing yards against Ohio State, one of the top teams, top defenses in the nation, and he still passed for over 400 yards. I don't know what else. He is prone to throwing some interceptions, but even whenever he just messes up, some of the students just really don't like him. Some of the students were also upset that Georgia Southern scored points and some of the play calling in there. Folks, the game was over halfway through the first quarter. When we scored those 3 touchdowns in the first few minutes, they were just outplayed. They were outmatched by IU, and there wasn't much Georgia Southern can do. IU drew a lead, and then they were just going to experiment with plays. Why not? You have a lead, you might as well experiment with stuff. One of the biggest examples I saw was they had Richard Lego try and run the ball. Now, it could have been a muffed play. I'm not exactly sure what the original thing is, but why not see if he can actually just run the ball once? Because if you have 2 quarterbacks that can pass and run, that makes it even more it gives the opposing team a lot more to try and plan for. And why not see what he can do? Giving up points. This is still a new team for Tom Allen. We have to remember that. This is still his brand new team. None of these are his own players necessarily. The defense and the offense are getting used to completely new schemes because Kevin Wilson had a much different offense than most coaches around the NFL. they were also out of practice with an unexpected bye week. That throws everything off, especially when you were planning to play and you just didn't play and you had a week off. Skibby, give us your takeaways from this previous game.
Yeah, a lot of the same things you're saying. I think the main thing to take away is that IU is playing pretty well as of right now through the first 3 games on all sides of the ball, not just offense, defense, but we also got special teams. So one thing that needs to be stated is that the team that we're playing, though, Georgia Southern, I think it's really good to get excited. I mean, like, there's a big win, big blowout win, and IU doesn't get those all the time, and so those are usually kind of exciting. But I think we need to err on the side of caution. Georgia Southern is one of the worst teams in the FBS, so we do need to take that into account. Coming into it, I was expecting a pretty good day from the secondary too. Like you said, only held them to a little over 100 yards, but I think that was to be expected. I mean, if you watch the game, they're running it constantly. They run a pretty good triple option sometimes, and they're mostly going to get their yards on the ground. So with a pretty good defensive front, especially with people like T. Gray Scales leading that, I think the defense played great. One thing that I will say about Lego, though, and I mean from the perspective as an IU student, I was at the game too, and you're absolutely correct, man. He's getting booed whenever an incompletion happens, whenever he gets knocked down. When Peyton Ramsey comes out, they're cheering like it's nobody's business. And I mean, there was a lot to cheer for, but by the time it got to the second quarter, people were leaving because it was so hot. So even the very small crowd getting pretty big reactions. And like you said, I mean, he did get 400 plus yards against Ohio State, but I think the anger comes from the fact that, okay, yeah, you put up 400 yards against a ranked team, one of the teams that people think could be in a New Year's Six game, but then you go to Virginia, a team that won 2 to 3 games last year, and then you're playing Georgia Southern at home, a team that's arguably considered one of the worst in the FBS, and you're not playing well. I think that's where the anger is coming from. So until he starts proving that he can play better against subpar opponents, I think the anger is really just going to continue, and I don't know if that's going to help him with his psyche. I don't know if that's really going to help him get any better. But the run game is finally here, and I think it's going to even get better. As I stated last week, Tyler Nady is going to be coming back relatively soon. So if Morgan Ellison can keep it up, then you get Nady back. That should be a great combo. I mean, IU has, it seems like 20 running backs out there at a time. So, I mean, if you can get one hot hand going, and then the air game starts going, the offense looks dangerous. And then when it came to the defense, I was very impressed with just the overall abilities that was going on, the way that they played, especially through the first half when, like you said, the game kind of mattered at that point. I'm not upset about the 17 points. I mean, yeah, like you said, you just gotta get young guys out there, get them reps, experiment with some stuff. I did appreciate, though, that in the closing minutes that we got a cornerback out there that's actively trying to strip the ball, scoop and score. That's the kind of defense I like to see. So I'm excited about that. These are good signs. The special teams, second straight game with a punt return touchdown.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
we're playing great right now. We'll see. And if we can keep clicking, not to say that we're going to win in Penn State, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but it should scare some of these ranked teams.
I would have to agree. Matt, what are your takeaways?
All right. Well, of course, first off, 185 yards on the ground. So I have to officially declare that our running game is back. It was missing. It was MIA. Now found it again. And I told you last week that getting Knight back on the line, having our offensive line healthy, would help. Lo and behold, it probably also helps that Georgia Southern not that good. But getting him back, obviously there's some holes on the right side, which is nice to see, especially since, that's where we've usually run it over the past couple of years, is on the right side. So that was nice to see. Defense coming up big, 3 turnovers. Still no interception, of course, but prediction. I believe that'll come this week. I think Trace has been known to throw the ball around. So I can see us maybe picking one off.
We'll talk about that in a sec, but yeah.
Yeah.
I have to agree.
Little foreshadowing. But yeah, I was really happy with this week's performance. Other note, it's nice to see us pull away from a team that was obviously worse than us. There's been situations, I'm not going to name Rutgers, where teams that are worse than us somehow stay in the game with us through 4 quarters, or, we're beating them by 28 in the 4th quarter and they come all the way back and win. So, it was nice to see that I was never nervous about the game. Never. I said, I looked over to my girlfriend in the middle of the game. It's over. Like halfway through the 1st quarter. It was like 21-0. It's over. It's done. We've cooked this game. Now can we please go home? I stayed for the whole game though.
Yeah.
Which happened to be the 1st quarter ended up being like an hour and a half. So
which is why we just talked about, folks, them scoring 17 points. It's not a big deal. It was against 2nd string players. It was just trying to look at new play calling, and that's about it. But
2nd string players, and it was so hot outside. Everybody's they got pads on, like they're tired by the end of the 4th quarter, and they didn't. What did they score? They scored right before halftime, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we were already tired by then. Like I'm not worried about it at all. And yeah, Jay Sean is a monster. I want to see him get more touches this year. Hopefully they keep kicking the ball to him back there, and so he can keep returning those punts, because he's 2 games in a row. Let's make it 3 at Penn State. I'm excited.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're gonna move on, and next up, the Hoosiers travel to Happy Valley to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. and it's on the Big Ten Network. Skibby, start us off. Give us your take on what we should see from both teams this Saturday.
All right, so I'm going to start with Penn State first, just because that's the team that we're not focusing on the most in this IU-centered podcast. So I think it's pretty safe to say when you think about Penn State last year and this year, there's only one name that should be coming out, and it's Saquon Barkley. He's going to be the center field for Penn State in this game, as he has been over the past 2 years, especially coming and playing and running around to the outsides beyond the tackles. Because just watching even the end of the Penn State-Iowa game, once he gets to the outside, he's so hard to take down. You can't just take him down with an arm tap. He's too strong. He's too athletic. We saw him hop over a man. I mean, the lure of him is making him just Heisman. You just hear it whenever I see him, I think, wow, he's playing like a Heisman Trophy winner right now.
He's now the leading. He's now the leading front runner in the Heisman after this.
Yeah, he's playing. He's insane. He's got crazy stats, and I think their first true test, they go to Kinnick Stadium, they go to Iowa, and they ended up winning. He played a pretty good game, so that's why I'm thinking next week you're going to see a lot of him. He's so elusive in space, so that's where he's going to do his damage. But even watching this past weekend, Penn State gave up a few pretty big plays. So I think one of the keys for IU is being able to take our shots downfield, and that's why, although it might anger some of the fans, as we talked about, Richard Lego, he's got the arm and he has the ability to put up yards. It's just a matter of will he. So I think you have to keep taking your shots downfield to people like Simeon Cobbs. You have to try and at least get a big play. See if you can break a run. Because I just don't see Penn State's defense giving up long, sustained drives to us. I don't think we're as good as Penn State, so I don't think IU's offense is as good as Penn State's defense is. So I think you're going to have to get them on a few big plays, or else the game could turn ugly.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Barkley is the Heisman frontrunner, and yeah, if we're voting for the Heisman today, and I had a vote, I would vote for him.
You don't have a big
Obviously, because he's just so ridiculous. But is a human highlight reel. So really, the only way we hang in this game is if, for some reason, Saquon gets food poisoning before the game, and they're having to use their backup running back. They're gonna run all over us. It's just because Saquon is so good that he's going to make plays on his own. He doesn't even really need people. Like, he needs people to block for him, but he doesn't need really good blocking for him to make plays. He can just outrun people. So they'll get the running game going, and then the running game opens up play action, which is the bread and butter for Trace McSorley. So the only way we hang in this game, I think, is if something goes wrong on Penn State's health-wise. I don't see them. Even though our defense is going to play great, we're going to stay in it for the first half, normal IU things. Second half, they'll pull away just because the running game will slowly start to sink in by then. But I think the underrated portion of Penn State's team is their defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they had some really big plays at the end of the Iowa game. But if we all remember the Iowa game, it was a very low-scoring game until the end, like the very, very end. And then they each piled on, 10 or 14 points each. Like, it was a low-scoring game. Kinnick at night is a whole nother monster. And you've seen people go in there, Ohio State a couple years ago, Michigan last year. So it's a tough place to play. And, they took it like champs, and Penn State's defense held strong, except for maybe that one long run that gave Iowa the lead. I mean, all the other stuff, they're going to score. Like, they're at home. Their offense was clicking a bit. So I think their defense is much better than people are giving credit for, just because the offense is so good. And again, Penn State's my choice to win the Big Ten. So, it is what it is.
All right. Like you guys talked about a little bit, it's all Saquon Barkley, and it's like that for a reason. He's his numbers are incredible. He's 5'11", he's 230 pounds, and he runs a 40 at 4.344. Those numbers are people 30, 40, 50 pounds lighter than him are supposed to be running that fast. He's crazy. He's a train. He's quick. And it's just incredible, some of the stuff he does. But also a lot of it is he gets some great blocking from his O-line and his receivers. If you look at replays during the I think it was the Pitt game, they had both of the guards pull and start blocking down the field, and he scored a touchdown. They've got some incredible blocking schemes, and that's going to be a challenge for IU. They haven't seen a lot of blocking like that, especially receivers that can really, really block. So we really have to work on shedding those blocks and looking for those pulls to try and get him down, because and then once we get to him, we can't miss tackles. He breaks a lot of tackles. I don't know the specific number, but he's broken like a couple dozen already this season. And he averages 213 total yards a game. So I think it's just how we got to limit him. But on the other side, their defense is, I think I've seen their defense is prone to missing tackles. Once we get into the open field, that's where we have to make some plays. Simi Cobbs, I'm looking at you. We got to get into the open field. We got to make some runs, make some big plays like you guys mentioned, and that's how we're going to win the game. And we also have to get to McSorley. We got to get to their QB. He fumbles, he throws interceptions sometimes. Once he's under pressure, if we can just get pressure to him, make him get a little antsy, which is going to be a tall task in Happy Valley, but I think we can do that. Real quick, Skibby and then Matt, and then I'll give you guys what our one key to pulling off an upset in Happy Valley will be. Skibby, real quick, what's your one key to pulling off an upset?
For me, I think the key to going into Happy Valley and beating Penn State a tall task is limiting the big plays on their offense from Saquon Barkley and then Trace McSorley once he can get moving, because he can get moving. And if you lose track of wide receiver, he isn't a terrible quarterback. He can put it there and get you in a spot. Last year, no, I don't know if people remember, but last year, I mean, I know it's in Bloomington, so on the road, Penn State and IU were going back and forth. That game was very close, much closer than I think people anticipated it being, against a team last year that I don't think anybody can doubt. Penn State was a pretty good team. So it's a little different now. I think they're a little more molded, and they're more confident in themselves. But IU played them well last year, very similar team. And what did them in the end was Trace McSorley getting around and just heaving balls up when a play breaks down. If you can limiting Saquon Barkley, that gives us a chance.
My one key is food poisoning, chicken pox, or an act of God. I don't see us winning. It's in Happy Valley. They're going to show up. They show up for every game. It's really hard to compete against, 105,000 people, 106,000 people that is in their stadium. And it'll be packed. So, miracle, basically.
Are you going to serve him the bad chicken, Matt?
Hey, get me a ticket out to Happy Valley, and I might do it. No, just kidding. Please don't blame me if he does actually get poisoning.
All right, we got one limit Saquon and one person who just doesn't have any faith in the Hoosiers whatsoever. Skibby, you stole my key. Limit Saquon Barkley. We're not going to completely shut him down. No team probably in the entire nation is going to completely shut him down. But Iowa did. They almost won, and Saquon Barkley had over 300 total yards. That's incredible for one player, and they almost beat them. I think our key is to limit his rushing around 150 yards. I don't think we can go over that 200-yard mark, and receiving to about 75. Don't think we can go over that 100-yard mark for receiving. And we have to limit his big plays to like one big play. He gets 4 or 5 sometimes a game, and we just got to limit that. If we do that, I think the rest of their offense, there's a good chance that our defense can slow down their offense. And then if we can just limit him, it's up to our offense just to keep up. Like Skibby talked about last year, it was a back and forth thing. If our QBs can be on point, we can stay with their offense. We can stay with what little Saquon Barkley is doing for his own potential, and we can do it. If Lego throws another 400 type of yard game to Simi Cobbs, Ramsey comes in providing that running stuff, I think that is the only way we're going to be able to pull off an upset.
Yeah. It's not that I don't have any faith in us. It's just there's so many things that has to happen a particular way.
Yeah, man, crazy things have happened.
Anything can happen, and over till the fat lady sings. But I'm just saying we have a better chance of beating Michigan and Wisconsin at home, just because we're at home, than we have beating Penn State away.
True.
And over till Martha the Mop Lady sings. All right, we're going to move on. We didn't have anything planned for IU basketball this week, but as sports news happens, there was news that was broken out today that could end up relating to IU. Earlier this morning, if you haven't heard yet, the FBI is involved. Arrested 10 people, including 4 NCAA coaches, for corruption. This is a huge topic, and we're not going to get into much detail with this. We could talk about this for hours, but we wanted to briefly mention how it might affect IU. First, for those of you who didn't hear or are confused at what actually is going on, since there's a lot of legalities with all of it, this morning the FBI arrested 10 people for corruption. Basically, Adidas officials were bribing other NCAA coaches to try and recruit players to their schools in hopes of having them sign a shoe deal with Adidas once they got into the NBA. The FBI did not ever explicitly state what school or what players were a part of this. I want to make that clear. They have not officially released that, but they did give a very detailed description, and it is widely considered that the main school is the University of Louisville. that's the school behind this. As of now, the first player talked about that received bribes was a 5-star recruit that committed to Louisville out of the blue on June 3rd. He wasn't supposed to go there. It was just a very surprising commit.
Brian Bowen.
And it was said that he was receiving $100,000 in cash installments from some other assistant coaches that were named in the arrest this morning. The second player that was supposedly supposed to graduate in the 2019 class, and their family was also taking bribes. The investigation is still ongoing, and there is a lot that we do not know about this. This is going to be months of investigating and stuff coming out. So this is just the bare bones. This literally happened about 12 hours ago. But what does this mean for IU? It all comes back to Romeo. Doesn't everything always come back to Romeo lately?
Romeo, where art thou?
Romeo, it wasn't a secret that Louisville was his first choice, basically, in regards to where he might commit within the next couple months. But I find it hard-pressed that he's going to commit to Louisville with everything going on, not to mention all the consequences and sanctions that the NCAA might have for Louisville in the future. Since Louisville was the front runner, I feel pretty confident. I think a lot of people feel confident that there's a good chance that this team might now be off of his list, meaning the Hoosiers are basically next on that list. We'll still be head-to-head with Vanderbilt and somewhat Duke, but really pay attention, Hoosier fans, because this could significantly turn the tables for the commitment of Romeo Langford. Is there just any quick thoughts that either of you have on this, or just that's pretty self-explanatory?
I mean, real quickly, I'm excited about Romeo, of course, but I think what we all have to sit back and look at is that I think this is just the beginning. Honestly, there was a mention in the affidavit put out by the FBI that Brian Bowen, the athlete that took money and,
Supposedly so far.
Supposedly took money. Sorry, allegedly took money.
We just want to make it clear that that's not official yet.
It's not official, but he did commit to Louisville 3 days after they offered him a scholarship in April of his senior year. That another shoe company, big shoe company that happens to sponsor a couple universities that Brian was also being recruited by, was also in talks with him, or supposedly, allegedly, in this affidavit it says, allegedly in conversation with him about maybe also paying him to go to a school. That company probably has a swoosh as a logo. So if it's happening just in Adidas, as an IU fan, we all know, repping Adidas right now, that's us. That's Kansas. That's a bunch of other huge programs. But if it's Nike too, Arizona, Duke, North Carolina, the list goes on. This could go super deep into basketball. This could change recruiting forever if big programs like Arizona and USC are on the list. Auburn's on the list. Not that big of a basketball school, but still. And Oklahoma State, who's known for their basketball program, they have great fans out there. Those teams, their assistant coaches were on the list. And this is just the beginning. So we have no idea what's gonna happen. This is gonna shake up some things.
Exactly. We didn't want to get into too much detail, but we wanted to just briefly mention that that's what's going on. That's the news that came out today, and it could potentially lead to some good news for IU. We'll all cross our fingers. But let's get into some more positive news surrounding the NBA. Over the past weekend, Carmelo Anthony expanded his list of teams that he would waive his no-trade clause for. Originally, he announced that he would just only play for Houston, but after weeks of getting nowhere, the Knicks insisted that they were not going to be able to make a trade with Houston. So he expanded his list from just Houston to the Cavs and the Thunder, and not much later, literally a few hours, Adrian Wojnarowski broke the news that Melo was being traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott, and a 2018 second-round pick. Matt, give us your thoughts on this blockbuster trade that coincidentally happened 2 days before media day and 3 days before training camp started.
I'm so happy for Carmelo. He got to leave the worst organization in sports. I'm sorry. The Knicks are the worst run organization in all of sports. They're the most popular team in New York, and they somehow can't make the playoffs, and they can't get free agents. In New York City playing in Madison Square Garden. I don't know. But anyway, happy that Carmelo got out of there. Oklahoma City is fantastic. He's going to love it there. I already know it. Fans already love him. You saw them. They're lining up outside of the airport, trying to give him high fives through the chain link fence. They're excited. Knicks, again, got robbed. Like, Phil Jackson needs to be fired from his job. If you had not talked crap about Carmelo for like a year and a half now, you could have gotten a lot more for Carmelo. But Phil has talked over and over and repeatedly bashed Melo to the point where I believe that has decreased his value, and they could have gotten a lot more for Carmelo Anthony. Nothing against, Enes Kanter. I think he's great. But Doug McDermott is an all right backup. And they should have gotten a lot more than a second-round pick from the Thunder for this trade. So Knicks got robbed. I think this propels the Thunder to second in the West. And I think as the team that in the West can challenge the Warriors the most, they're going to be very good defensively because you have 4 people on the floor, that's including Andre Roberson, who are great defenders. Steven Adams is a pretty good center. I think they got a big 3.5 in OKC because I don't think.
Are you saying OKC is going to be good at defending?
Yes.
They have one top 100 defender.
I'm telling you, as they will be great at defending.
Oh my god.
I am telling you. I believe in Billy Donovan. I do. I think he'll come up with a system that works for the players that they have on the floor. Carmelo, kind of a liability on defense, but the other 4 will be just fine. Steven Adams, I like a lot. I think he's really good. He's 23 going on 24 now. So he's really young. I think he'll improve over the offseason. And I thought this was a great move because Carmelo and Russell were working out this summer together. You've seen videos online of them playing pickup games or whatever. So they might already have some chemistry, and especially since they probably play with each other on Team USA. So I think he'll be great. I'm so glad for Carmelo he gets to play with good players again. Not that Porzingis is not good, but, Ron Baker is not that good. And, so I'm really excited to see what happens.
Right. I'm going to contradict you. I'm going to think that the defense is where it's going to hurt them this season. But what I was a little surprised at the timing at first because it all talk kind of die down. No one was really expecting anything. But when you think about it, apparently he had been talking about that he didn't even want to put a Knicks jersey on anymore. And media day was yesterday. Training camp started today, so it made sense that after the Knicks said, "Hey, we can't get a deal done. We can't realistically get a deal done with Houston. Would you like to expand the list of teams we're willing to work with you and try and get you traded and get you out of here?" He expanded it to OKC and the Cavs, and right away, basically, a trade was happened. I did think originally that he was going to go to the Rockets or even like San Antonio or the Cavs before OKC, and I'm going to take this straight from Stephen A. Smith. I think the biggest loser in this entire trade deal is CP3, Chris Paul. He left Houston to go play with James Harden, and the original intent was to recruit Melo so he could get past the second round for the first time in his career. He left $200 million on the table, and now there are three teams that are better than the Rockets. I think Golden State, San Antonio, and OKC are now going to possibly be better than the Rockets. and CP3 left money to just basically go to almost the same situation. But I'm also, it's incredible, the OKC administration, how they were able to turn nothing into basically PG-13 and Melo. They gave away, and yes, Hoosier fans, we all love Oladipo, but we know Oladipo is not, he's not Paul George, but they gave up Oladipo, Sabonis, Cantor, and McDermott, and only a second-round pick to get two of the top 15, top 20-ish best players in the league, and that's crazy. But I do think PG-13 is also somewhat a loser in all these trades. Russ is a guy who likes to do a lot of offense on the team. So is Melo, and I think Paul George is the kind of guy that might become a second or third option before they can find a rhythm. But I think they're now fighting for a spot, the second spot in the West. Do they get it? I don't know. It depends on how quickly they mesh and how quickly they're able to work together. If it takes a long time, I think it's going to be really hard to catch up to a team like the Spurs. But if they can get it going quickly before training, right as training camp starts, it's hard not to put them in the mix as contenders. Skibby, what about you?
First thing I had to say is, with Melo gone, there's no point in even watching the East until the Eastern Conference Finals now.
Hey, whoa. Hey, okay. We got we got the Cavs and the Celtics and the Wizards. That second round, there's going to be one of those two teams clashing. Yeah. Those are some pretty high-powered teams. I agree, but you got to give love to those top three teams, and Toronto's not bad either.
Hey, the Heat are good too, by the way.
The Heat are good for the East, and I think that the Heat will end up making the playoffs with a pretty good record because half of the games that they have to play against are in the East. But I think when it comes to the East, it's going to end up, I can't see another situation where the Celtics and the Cavs don't face off for a trip to the finals. And, I mean, no disrespect to the Wizards and the Raptors. They're pretty good teams, but they're not on the same level right now as Boston and Cleveland. But let's move on to OKC and Melo.
For you.
I mean, John Wall can play. I mean, like, I'm not no disrespect to John Wall, one of the best in the world, but to Melo, at least in OKC, I really like what the Thunder have been doing this offseason so far. They come from a season where they really only have Russell Westbrook. They just coming off an offseason where they just lost Kevin Durant to the team that they should have beat and gone in the Western Conference Finals. And then he's able to go out, in my opinion, basically steal Paul George and, like you guys said, basically steal Carmelo Anthony now. And right now, I think that they are the best chance to beat Golden State. Because, I mean, I want to say it, you may not believe me, but I was thinking this before Stephen A. Smith said it. And that's just the thing about Stephen A. Smith. He's lucky he's got a morning show.
Yeah.
Say it before me. But who on the Warriors right now is going to be able to stop Russell Westbrook? I just don't see anybody that's going to be able – it's Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the guy that's going to have to defend him one-on-one. And I think Westbrook wins that battle every day. So if you go all in on Russ, you got Melo and you got Paul George on the outside. So I don't think they're as good because I think there is something to be said about the fact that the Warriors have now won a championship. They have a whole season under their belt, and they're going to keep getting better. That's why I still think Golden State is the class act of the NBA, but I don't think you're going to see it this year where Golden State is beating OKC by 30 points. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think those games are going to be incredibly fun to watch, and that's not to shortchange San Antonio. Houston, yeah, they're the big loser. They'll probably be the fourth best team in the West, but there's a chance that they might get knocked out in the first round, depending on who they play. Maybe a hot Minnesota team. Anybody really.
Yeah,
I mean, I really think where people land in the West is all going to depend on health of the teams. There's always one or two or three all-stars that go down with injuries, and so
very true.
Yeah,
that's where it's going to. And also, Steph Curry will not be guarding Russell Westbrook. It's going to be Klay Thompson guarding Russell Westbrook.
Thompson's not going to be guarding. Klay Thompson's going to be up on PG-13 right now, and you're going to have KD on Melo. Because who does that have Steph Curry guarding then? And who on the Warriors is guarding Paul George? Draymond?
Yeah.
No. I'm not accept. I don't accept that answer.
All right. But yeah, like we talked about, Houston at the beginning of the summer, they were supposed to be the clear second team in the West, and now they're already down to fourth, which just goes to show how crazy this NBA offseason was. And as basketball fans, we all love it. But that about wraps it up for our third show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to add suggestions in the comment section below or contact us through our website. A reminder to follow us on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, like our Facebook page, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube. Click that button that's right there. Subscribe on either Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Stitcher, and leave us a review. All the links are in the description below. Visit our website, thehoosiersound.wordpress.com, to find all of our information regarding podcasts, and stay tuned for updates through social media. We really do want to start doing segments by taking your questions as the audience, so be sure to comment, chat, send us a message, tweet at us, whatever. So you can, if you have a question, send it this way, and we'll answer it on our next show. Be that first person to send us a question. But thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.